Okay. I have 4:01. I'd like to call to order the Board of Public Works and Utilities. We'll start off with the roll call. Mayor Kim Smith,
Here.
Alderman Dan Stevens,
Is present.
Jared Holter is represented today by Kevin from the Public Works. Kevin.
Here.
And then Sabrina Steger.
Present.
Also present, we have the City Administrator, Rick Niemeyer, and we have Larry Jurassic, Third District Alderman. Is there anyone else online?
Alder Wolf is up.
And no big shock, Diane Wolf is on the line as well. She normally is. Okay. Okay, moving on to item number 3, we have public input. Anyone wishing to provide public input will be limited to 3
Sure.
minutes.
Did we skip over number 2?
Oh, yes, we did. Good point of order.
Teamwork.
Yeah, all right. Item number 2 is consideration action on minutes from the previous meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
We'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second.
Motion to approve by Dan, seconded by Mayor Kim. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Now we're moving on to public input. Anyone wishing to provide public input is limited to 3 minutes. Please identify yourself by your name and your address. Is there anyone here for public input?
Hello, my name's Grant Morgan. I live at 562 Prawley Road. I'm just here in support of extending the retaining wall along the Esther Drive. I feel that this is a safety concern that is something that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here for public input? Second call, public input. Third and final call for public input. Anyone else online at all?
Nope.
Okay. Public input is closed. Moving on to item number 4, the 2025 to 2029 capital improvements budget, starting with 4A, the CIB, including the 2025 CIB project detail. Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So included tonight in the packet and the link that was issued through the agenda is our 2025-2029 capital improvements budget. This is the start of the capital budget season. So tonight's goal here is just to get the complete budget, all the information out to the board and elected officials. Moving forward, over the next month, we would ask that everybody reviews the projects, come to see various staff departments with any questions about any of the requests, any of the projects included in the budget. We would start on our normal schedule at our October meeting, moving into more of cutting down, eliminating some projects, but this is just a first start. You get the budget in everybody's hands, see what the projects are, and spend the next month sort of discussing if need be or have any questions. I would point out that for the 2025 capital improvements budget, there are a total of 76 projects at a total estimated cost of $22,200,500. So just know that we will have some whittling down of projects, similar to previous years. Probably the one thing I wanted to note here for this discussion is included in that would be the refinancing, I'll say, of the community center project, right? When that project was bid and let, the council made a decision. We took a short-term note on that. So the final bonding for the community center project will be included in this year for our 2025 bonding. So the total number will be larger than it would have been in normal, right? We would normally do about 4 million, right? Plus or minus in projects where we do our normal sort of 4 million, and then we would add the refinancing of the community center on. So our total capital bonding for 2025 could be in the $7 to $8 million range, but a large majority of that is already sort of a sunk cost with just refinancing the community center. So just as we move forward in the process this fall, right, when we start doing total figures, there might be a current year and then would add the community center on there. So the number will be larger than we've seen in the past due to that refinancing. So I guess that time I'd open it up for any questions or
I've got
comments
one
anybody had.
for Sabrina. Yeah, so what, not including the bonding issue with the community center, what would you see as your recommendation as a cap for expenditures in 2025 in order to safeguard our financial status?
Great question. So again, this is where we kind of butt heads a little bit, between me and my co-partner in crime. There are a lot of projects, a lot of worthy projects. You know, we've been kind of stuck at that 3 to 3.5 million for several years, which has kept us in our good standing. I think for this year, I really struggled to move past the 3.5 to 4 million outside of the community center, just because that is such a large borrowing that we are doing. I would, you know, in the future, look at upping that slightly just because of the cost of living changes, inflation, so forth. You can't put sidewalks on a residential property, what we could have in the past. We just talked to a guy from 2019 who paid $100 to get his sidewalk replaced. We can't do that now, right? So I think as we move into 2026 and beyond, that I could see us, you know, creeping that 3.5 to 4 million up. But for this year, my recommendation would be to stay between 3.5 and 4 million.
Any other yes, Dan?
Sabrina, when do we actually do the bonding? Would it be like June? Is that early or is that later in the cycle?
Nope. So we would do the bonding, the same as in the past, where Brad Vagut would come in likely February and we'd have the first resolutions. And then usually we've done a bond, like the final bond issuance in April. So we would do that the same. That's when we would refinance that bond anticipation note and lump that in with our bonding for this CIP process.
Mayor?
Are you seeing any indication we have the, I can't remember what the term is, but the short-term loan on the community center, are rates tending up or down? Or you can see a sense of urgency or not urgency for, processing this? Or do you think our standard schedule is going to be appropriate?
I think our standard schedule is appropriate because I believe, I think September 18th is when the feds meet next from the Federal Reserve. And I think we'll continue to see interest rates drop. So I would think that our regular term of how we process everything is appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, and we've done this, what's nice this year is, well, we've had in the past year, so in some cases too, everyone here has done this process before multiple times. But I guess I'd like to put out some recommendations for when we meet next. My recommendation, what I'm going to do personally, what I'd recommend everyone do is to try on their own independently. Obviously, we'll have discussions as a group when we're in a quorum. Try to come up with a $3.75 million cap. That's right in the middle of the 3.5 to 4, as close to that as you can. And I'd like to have us as a goal, and you know, this will be open discussion amongst us, of trying to get down to maybe about a $6 to $8 million line next month, with making the really, really hard decisions that are always the most contentious by then November, to get us down into that $3.5 to $4 million range. What does everyone think of that?
They have
I
goals.
think that's a good plan.
Okay,
I mean, it's possible that when we narrow down our items that will be aligned and it will just be pretty
at
clear.
3.75 next month, it's not,
Gonna hit the number. We
never
can-
happened before, but
we can go for that.
well, I mean, naturally, we're each going to have different priorities, but I think if we each try to get down to that $3.75 million range-ish,
Yeah.
that will probably hit a $6 to $8 million agreement.
Right.
And then we just have to figure out the really tough final decisions by November.
And I think also, you know, we're trying to set things up to be a little bit more standardized so that we already know what some of our highest priority items are, such as the cemetery. And we know, you know, that we're gonna prioritize maintaining what we have over growth whenever possible, and we're committed. There's certain projects we know we're committed to.
Yep. that's a good point.
And so I think that, you know, it is possible that we will have efficient discussion that gets us to our goals quickly.
Yeah. And that is something, thank you, Mayor, for bringing that up. When you go through this, I think, you know, I think we're all aware of it, just to emphasize again, there are certain projects, cemetery, certain of the public works projects that are in there that we're probably already committed to because design is done, things of that nature. We have funds coming in from the state or federal that are with this, and, you know, so keep that in mind when you're going through your list as well. And of course, definitely talk with the staff, everybody, to get their input as well. So anyone have any other, oh, Sabrina.
I was just going to add, Jared and I had some discussions before he left, and I've talked with Kevin as well. Going forward, so in 2026 and going forward, we're really going to try to take a look at a 5-year plan and figure out how we would fund the majority of the projects in that plan. So whether we think we can borrow so much each year, whether we do a mortgage revenue bond for the water and sewer utility. So Jared and I are going to do that work, but it was too late in the process for this year, but you'll see that in coming years.
Oh,
It's just kind of a more holistic view to see, like, here are 5-year needs. How are we going to fund that?
Yeah.
It's not something that would be set in stone, but it kind of creates a roadmap.
right. Well, you take a look at this in its entirety, from 2025 through 2029. Obviously, the wants far exceed a 3.75-ish million dollars per year to make that happen. It's just not going to happen with that. So yeah, I think that would be good, coming up with a more longer term, I guess, process. Yeah, Mayor.
I just want to point out too that, I had mentioned before that one of my ideas, what, you know, whether it's supported or not will be seen in the future, but as we conclude this budget, I think it's a good idea if we also earmark a couple of projects that are just missing the cut, so that if we were to have a favorable outcome at the end of our year, a favorable budget balance, that we could make the decision to allocate money. Because what I've seen in the past is, people, all of a sudden, these projects we've never heard of are vying for funding and potentially getting funded over well-vetted long-term projects. So I'd like to also identify some of those as we go through, you know, when we get to the final stages of the project. Like if, you know, we got an unexpected grant that covered part of the cost of other things, or
Sure.
if interest income rates soared or whatever.
So is your intent, it would still have to be voted on by the common council, of course, but is your intent
Or-
then that if we end up getting a windfall of, you know, let's say $250,000 next year, and we already have I'm going to use my term, I don't know if you like it or not, order of merit list, if you will, of additional projects that we've all agreed and voted on already?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that would have to be agreed upon and voted on, but just that we had like the ones that just prioritized items.
Yeah.
Like I'm just thinking of at the end of the year, we had a budget surplus this year, and we did allocate most of that money to the equipment replacement fund, which is where we traditionally put it. But then that some of the money was spent just by simple vote of the council, and not in comparison to all of the other things that we maybe wanted to spend money on,
Yeah.
because we were making decisions separately from that activity. So maybe to your point, the opposite way of thinking would be if we do have, I mean, hoping that we have the, obviously this isn't the norm, right? Normally we don't have any excess at the end, but at the end of the budget year. But maybe it would be that we put that through a different vetting process. Sabrina, do you know what can you use better words to say? I feel like you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I think I understand. What I could do, and I think I've talked about this a little bit, is if we do have, if we are lucky enough to have a surplus at the end of the year, that I could bring forward, like, here's the surplus, here were the last 2 projects that didn't get funded in the CIP that there was a lot of interest in. we could fund one of these, or we could do X, Y, Z and bring that forward to the council after we know where we're sitting.
Yeah, that's
think-
what I'm.
And just choosing like the last two might not be the way to go. It would be, I guess, we'd have to have discussions on which ones we think rise to the next level if we'd had the money available. The reason I say that is, if we're down to that $6 million range and we still need to cut another, 2.25 million in this scenario, you're going to also just look at really high dollar ones that are still on there that, well, all
Mhm.
right, this $1.1 million project, there's no way we're going to be able to fund it, even though we all agree it's really important. And that might get cut before the last two, which are down into the $50,000 range in order to make that. So, yeah, Dan,
I think it's a good idea, but it's going to be contingent on how much the surplus is. And
bingo.
It's not really that different than just putting it in equipment replacement fund and then having council vote on it. But I don't think it's a bad idea to say, if we were at the $200,000 mark, then this paving project that just missed the cut, we could do that. And if it's 50,000, then, get a new squad car or something like that. And then we'll just let council toss it around
Mhm.
when we get to that point. But anytime we're discussing what do we want to do with the surplus, that is a great problem to have, but
Probably not the right
Yeah.
place to be right now.
Yeah. But yeah, coming up with a process, I think is ultimately where we're.
Yeah,
going.
that's really what I
Yeah.
was asking.
So maybe staff can even just look at that and, lead them through that process and collaborate with them to figure out what. That might be, what Dan mentioned might be good, if we have 200K, do we want to do a 200K project or 450K projects, It all come out with what comes off, falls off the list here, of course. So,
Optimistically speaking.
yeah,
or we could do the smallest dollar ones
Yeah.
and just get a bunch of the little stuff out of the way. too.
right, yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying, but you could have potentially, if we have 100K, this is what we'd like to do. And of course, we'd recommend to the common council from that. If we have 200K, this is what we'd like to do. If we have 400K, this is what I'd like to do. And whatever those thresholds might be, maybe. Yes, Mayor.
I think the point is not necessarily at which one of the CIP removed items, but rather to refer to one of them rather than a new project that we never even vetted out.
Right.
That was the main point of it. Okay, sorry to take up the time on.
No, I think this is good. Yeah, I mean, getting us set for the future, I think is good. So yeah, and the staff probably can come up with some pretty good options there. Yeah, Rick is shaking his head yes too. So there you go. All right. Next. Is there any other discussion on 4A? Okay, 4B, discussion on overall budget figures, goals and funding levels. Well, I kind of sort of introduced that too. Is there anything else on that?
No, I would say we went over that pretty good, I think Sabrina gave over, the overall budget figure, right? What we're shooting for there, the 3.5 to 4 million, right? Some of the goals the mayor talked about is, sort of maintain what we currently have, right? And then one of the last things Sabrina mentioned for, future funding levels, projects, potentially a more in-depth look ahead of what our incoming projects would be on there and the associated potentially mortgage revenue bond that would go with, something long-term, like one I know is when the Department of Transportation redoes Main Street in 2028, right? That's one we know coming up would have a larger water and sewer contribution to replace those underground utilities when that's there. So that might be something that she had mentioned when we start looking further ahead of known projects that, hey, this one in a couple of years, almost a fixed cost because of the project, we're gonna have to figure out how to, account for that. So, but I think after that, we could probably move along, Chair.
Okay. Any other discussion on 4B? Moving on to item number 5, which is resolution 26-2024, approving the 2025 resource recovery special charge. Kevin Schubert.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in your packet tonight is Resolution 2624. This is our resource recovery special charges, basically as a new way now for our solid waste budget that we help recoup some of the charges for the recycling the city provides to our residents for that service. So this is similar to last year's approval for this. I do think the number increased slightly for 2025. It would be $9.50 a quarter would be placed on the utility bill to cover the recycling fee for the solid waste.
9:57.
9:57.
Oh, 9:57.
Want to get
Excuse me.
those 7 pennies.
I move we approve resolution 26-2024 as described in our packet, which also for clarity sets the charge at $9.50 per quarter,
57 cents.
57 cents.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion made by Mayor Smith, seconded by Sabrina Steger to approve the $9.57 per quarter charge. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6, the American Rescue Plan funding and possible reallocation of funds. Sabrina, I assume you're taking this? Or is it going to be Kevin?
I can definitely take it. Next in your packets on page 9, this is actually the ARPA listing that got submitted to the not the Internal Revenue Service, the Treasury. We have to submit this yearly in April. So we submitted this in April. We've had some internal discussions regarding this, and I brought it up a little bit in the past. But as you can see, in the first column is like the name of all of the projects that we've approved. Then I have to number them. And then after that is the adopted budget. And then we have a column for total obligations. So based on the ARPA dollars, we have to have the full $2,131,226 obligated by the end of 2024. So we have total obligations that are less than that. You can see then next is our expenditures. And then in the almost last column is the dollar figures left to obligate. And then we have to list a completion status for all of the projects. There are still some things that are not fully completed, so that can change things slightly. But I wanted to bring this forward to you all. I know earlier in the year, the council did approve to increase the fire department portion to come from ARPA dollars for 15,000. So you kind of see that at the bottom. That happened after this reporting was completed. So right now I'm showing $52,428.92 that we need to obligate by the end of 2024. So I'm not asking you to do that tonight. We will have some more information on projects. We're getting close to the final bill for the generator. So just something to be mindful of as we work through the CIP list. If there's a project that you think could be funded here, we could definitely do that. So just something to have in mind as we look to the CIP list.
So when you say end of 2024, are we talking a calendar year or is there a fiscal year? Or
Is
what?
the calendar year.
Okay.
So then what would happen is I would go in and report to the Treasury Service that we're obligating project 29, whatever that may be, for the 52,000.
So would it be too late to obligate this in November or even the December meeting? Is that too late?
No.
Okay, because I'm
Just by
thinking,
December 31st.
okay, so what I'm wondering is, when we go through our CIP lists, maybe one of the things we can do starting next month is to highlight one project where we'd like those final ARPA dollars to go. And I think whatever that project is, it should fairly exceed this money to make sure that we use every penny of it. And an example, and we are not in the decision making. Where I'm going is I noticed, just as an example, that's all it is that the police department, for instance, have $100,000 request for radios. Like, well, okay, let's, if we were decide as a group next month or in December, that's something we want to include on the 2025 CIP, that would be one we could say, well, let's also put the ARPA towards that because I think we can use it on that, couldn't we? Just as an example. And then we know for sure that that's all going to be obligated because it far exceeds what it is. So whatever the project is we decide on, my recommendation is make sure it is above and beyond to make sure we use every penny. Dan?
Sabrina, is everything on this list on page 9, is that also in our CIP budget?
No, these are projects that have already been approved in the past.
The,
These are
is there
old
any way that we could get, filter this somehow so the CIP, I mean, I think to Stephen's point, if we can kill two birds with one stone, we ought to. So is there a way to filter the projects on page 9 here that are also in the CIP so we can get,
So these are all old CIP projects.
Oh.
They're already,
They are not on your 2025 list. These are all old projects that have already been approved. We just didn't spend as much as we originally thought. So we have some dollars left.
Mayor.
I think it's common and not unusual that we sometimes fund things through other sources as part of our regular approval of the CIP process. And when we get down to the nitty gritty, I think it'll be fairly easy for Sabrina to tell us which projects may qualify for this. So as long as we just know we have to make sure we remember to include it, we shouldn't have to do a lot of extra consideration.
Which means that the way I'm looking at it then is we need to get down to a 3.8 cap as much as possible by next month, because we got 50,000 additional dollars that needs to be spent.
Yeah.
Is that, would you interpret that correctly also?
Yeah, I gave Kevin $50,000 more.
So,
We're
Yeah,
going in the right
absolutely. And
direction.
if this were to be approved by the committee next month, I would take it to council next month as well and kind of finalize that so we could get moving on whatever project it may be. So then we can kind of close out the ARPA and then we move the rest of the list towards our bonding.
I don't know.
So,
that
you-
we'll be able to
so
do
you need just action saying that we will include that in our 2025 capital improvement?
No, you wouldn't even need that. It could just be, we are proving that this item be
partially
spent
funded.
or partially funded by ARPA dollars. So if there was the intent, I mean, it doesn't have to be next month.
I
It
was gonna
could
say, I
be
don't
with
know that
over
we'll
the
get there
next.
next month,
Right.
but November we may.
That would be fine.
Yeah, like what's coming to mind is the cemetery. Would the cemetery qualify or the columbarium
It would.
Well, the columbarium is being paid for
out of this year?
through
Yeah.
the purchase of.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's a different fund. Never
Yeah,
mind.
it's out of the.
I take it back. Never mind.
I mean, we don't have to decide what project it
No.
is right now,
No.
but as we're discussing this next month, Sabrina can tell us this would be qualified, this would be qualified. We can just make note of it so that by November, we can say this project, 52,000 of it is going to come from ARPA. Whatever that project might be.
and there's 3 projects that are pretty close to the 52 right there. The unmarked police vehicle, this upgrade the city security and I guess a man lift at the Omni Center, but I'm not advocating for any one of those, but like we almost could just make a decision right now and just to be done with it.
But we got to decide what we're going to fund. And the other thing, Dan, is, and we do it any way that we all agree upon, but I would actually recommend not selecting a project that is close to the exact amount. I would take one that is above it, because that way we know, oh, it came in under bid. Well, still, we're spending every penny of that ARPA money.
Yeah, two of the 3 actually meet that. Actually, all 3 meet that criteria, but
What action do you need right now?
No action right now.
Any other discussion? Okay, moving on to item number 7, professional engineering services for Main Street, State Trunk Highway 157 sanitary sewer and water design. Back to Kevin again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So included in the packet tonight was the consultant selection summary. The city did send out an RFP, the 3 consulting firms to assist with the upcoming State Highway 157 Main Street project that the Wisconsin Department of Transportation is scheduled to construct in 2028. The RFP was for assistance in replacement of sanitary sewer and water infrastructure for that project. The results are shown there. Staff would recommend going with the low-cost MSA for the amount of $99,955.50.
What was the budgeted amount for this project? Or this portion of this project? Not the whole project, but
Let's say 100,000. I
I
don't.
think it is 100,000, what was originally budgeted.
It's in here.
So it's basically on budget with,
Yep.
with a few pennies left
Yep.
over.
All right, I make a motion that we approve MSA for the professional engineering services as described at a cost for the hours worked of 703 and the cost to be, the proposed cost to be $99,955.50.
Second.
Motion to approve by Mayor Smith, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 8, 2024 Cooperative Recycling Agreement. Back to Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. So included in your packet is the 2025 Cooperative Recycling Agreement. This is something that multiple communities here in the La Crosse County get together and have this agreement. This is actually how the recycler that we distribute to residents that has information on not only the landfill operations, but our own refuse and recycling program helps get paid for on that. Actually, the La Crosse County does chip in over half the cost for the production of that, and the rest of the communities share their half. So this is a annual agreement that we get into. Myself, I actually assist in coordinating and making sure everybody gets it signed and approved. So staff would recommend joining the agreement again as in previous years.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the 2024 Cooperative Recycling Agreement.
I'll second.
2025. It's misprinted.
Oh.
on the agenda.
2025.
It's
Yep.
That's what I get for reading the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, for 2025.
Second.
Okay, motion to pass by Mayor Smith, seconded by Sabrina for the Cooperative Recycling Agreement. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
Hmm.
Item number 9, 2024 final special assessment costs for various projects. Again, back to Kevin.
Yep, so including the packet is the final assessment costs for various projects. The only project we had assessment costs on this year was the 2024 miscellaneous concrete project as part of our sidewalk management program. Included in your packet today are the charges. I would like to make a note here just for the record. When I send out the letters in the fall, I have to make an estimate of what the charges will be for the next year. Actually, this year, our actual bid prices were over my estimated number, so we did have to charge my original number. We are not allowed to charge them anything higher than that. So this was, just to point out, is the estimate that I had included last fall in the letter. And the bid prices were actually slightly higher, so we do have to charge the estimate this year. In previous years, I was able to have a better estimate, but this year with inflation and some of the pricing pressures, it was higher than my estimate from the fall. So just want to make that clarification.
And volatile financial situation for the whole country for this last year. So actually the last 3. So any discussion?
I move we approve the 2024 final special assessment costs for various projects as described in the packet.
I'll second. So motion approved by the mayor, seconded by myself. Now, is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 10, change order number 2 for the City Hall generator project. Again, back to Kevin.
Yep, thank you. In your packet tonight is a memo from our consulting engineer as part of the City Hall generator project. We were required by the National Electric Code to do a coordination study on this. So this is looking at circuit breakers that may be in poor condition, right? So that study did produce some existing electrical equipment in various location, various size breakers within the electrical system that are in poor condition. The coordination study means that there's a potential that breaker on a power outage, once the generator would come back on, it would trip, thus cascading an outage back to potentially the source or the main breaker at the panel down there. So be honest, it's a little bit over my head electrically, but that's sort of the take on this. We did basically have some older infrastructure and we're just trying to update that infrastructure here at City Hall with the new generator project. We want to make sure everything's up to code and in very reliable condition with the investment we made in there. So staff would suggest approving change order number 2 in the amount of $18,193.00.
I'll move that we approve that as Kevin described.
I'll second.
Okay, motion to approve by Mayor Smith, seconded by Sabrina Steger. Where will these funds come from?
They should be included currently in the project budget.
So it's still within budget.
We're still within budget, right? We
Okay.
might have 1 or 2 more coming as we wrap up every detail on that project, very involved project. But this one should be able to be funded
Okay.
through the existing project funds.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 11, pay estimates. We have a total of 15 items in our packet. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve all 15 items.
Second.
Motion to approve by myself, seconded by Mayor Smith. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now I get into numbers again. That concludes the Public Works portion. We are now moving on to utilities, and item number 12 is the City of Onalaska Stormwater. It comes in 3 parts. A is the stormwater budget, then the equivalent runoff unit rate, which will be next, and then after that will be the stormwater financials. So stormwater budget, starting with Kevin.
Yeah, so included in your pack tonight is the current 2025 stormwater utility budget. This budget did have a few increases from last year. Just pointing out some common stuff, wages, benefits. We are spending more money on permit compliance, consulting services for that. So that's something that's been an increase over the last few years. There are some additional IT software maintenance, various software packages that were a little bit of addition this year, and then just equipment and vehicle repairs, maintenance on that. So I guess I'd entertain any questions anybody would have on the budget as currently proposed.
I move we approve the 2025 stormwater budget as presented.
Second.
Motion to approve by Mayor Smith, seconded by Sabrina Steger. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. On to 12B, establishment of a 2025 equivalent runoff unit ERU rate. Back to Kevin.
Yep, thank you. So included in the budget on page 37 of the packet is sort of the budget sheet summarizing setting the ERU rate for 2025. The ERU rate is what we bill quarterly on the utility bill. So 1 point of order tonight, included in the stormwater budget, the Public Works Department, we have asked for an additional Public Works staff member, and 1/3 of the funding for that position would be included in the proposed budget. As you can see on page 37, if you look, the current budget, the ERU rate to include the new staff member would be $113.76 for the year. That would be what staff would suggest setting the current rate at. If, as we go through the budget process, the other 2/3 of that funding for our request is coming from the general fund budget. So as we move forward in the budget funding, if due to general fund obligations that staff member is not able to be added to the budget, the ERU rate without the maintenance worker would be $110.72. So just sort of clarifying, staff would request, at least at this point in the beginning of the budget process, we keep the sort of set the current ERU rate to $113.76, with the understanding as the budget moves forward, if that position would have to be deleted, the new ERU rate would be $110.72.
Just to clarify, if that position is approved, The quarterly rate will go from $26.17 to $28.44. If that were not to be approved, it would go from $26.17 to $27.68 per.
Correct.
Dan,
So it looks like most of the cost is based off that position, but we're looking at about an 8% increase in the ARU rate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yep.
And that's mostly justified by the additional work. Okay.
about half of it is. I'm just doing quick, yeah. Little over, but yeah.
What typically, what's the average? I mean, that's a little higher than average, I'm assuming. What's been our history?
For the ERU rate itself, Dan?
Yeah.
It is, it's gone up the last few years. This is similar to a sewer rate or the water utility rate kind of deal. This is something that the city has the ability to set. I believe in 2023, I believe we were at about $96 for the year. Our current rate is $104.68. And with with the storm sewer budget just approved, right, we would be looking at, you know, a minimum of a request of $110.72. If the board would so entertain, keeping the maintenance worker in the budget, that would be $113.76.
Mayor,
Okay, so I think the appropriate thing to do is to move forward because we just approved the budget with that in as described here. But I'm just questioning, so if through the budget process, the position is removed, would we need to come back to this item at a later Public Works meeting and
We could,
readjust
yes,
it
we could, we
again?
could include it potentially either in November after the final CPI is sort of in, or potentially even coming back in December and making it one last change once we have everything wrapped up for the capital
So
improvement budget.
Wouldn't it be more prudent to just wait to take action on this until council has approved the budget?
We could, if that was the board's.
We don't really have
decision.
control over that
No.
here.
I think our point moving forward was, since the stormwater budget is a smaller portion, right? We just wanted to make sure, you know, it was there. It's only a third of the position, right? We still are aware that the majority of the funding for that position is still yet to be figured out. So at this time, we're just requesting that it stay in the budget, knowing that maybe the harder decision for that position is further to come.
couldn't we not make a motion that's contingent within the motion itself? Saying approval of the
That's what we'd
rate
have
of
to do.
2844 contingent upon a future approval with the general fund for the additional public works worker. Otherwise, it would be 2768. Could we just put that
Yes.
into the motion?
And fundamentally, I'm in support of the position, but I just am trying to do the correct thing, and I'm not sure that it's correct for us to approve a ERU. You know, what we're doing by approving the budget is we're saying to council, this is what we think is a good budget for our stormwater program. But by setting the ERU, it's kind of presumptuous because we don't have the correct and final information.
I said maybe make it contingent. You have both rates inside of the motion, either this or that contingent upon an approval. If we just want to go clean, we can just table this and, you know, for 2 months.
I like the contingency plan. I mean, we can take care of it now.
Yeah.
And if council has a big beef with it, then we know what the other outcome is.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion. And Kevin and Sabrina, let me know if this isn't clear. I'll make a motion to approve the 2025 ERU rate at $28.44 per quarter, contingent upon the subsequent approval of the additional maintenance worker. Otherwise, that rate will revert to $27.68 per quarter. Mayor,
Okay, so under discussion, Rick, do you think that is the correct course of action? And do you think that that rate could be approved both ways here tonight and still hold up? If regardless of what budget changes happen later, without us having to revisit it then?
I do think that it's an appropriate way. It's one of the two ways that could be moved forward. And I think if you move forward this way, it would be fine. Because then the worker, whether it's approved or not approved, we know what that amount's gonna be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 12C, the 2024 stormwater financials.
I'll take that one. So next in your packet, starting on page 46, is the balance sheet for the stormwater utility. That is shown on pages 46 and 47. Then starting on page 48 is our budget report for the stormwater utility. We have 47.61% remaining of revenues to hit our total budget. We are only 2 quarters in for water billing, so I'm very confident that we will come very close to hitting that budget, if not exceeding it. So those are still coming. In regards to expenses, if you take a look on page 49, the total expense total, we're sitting at $953,948.96. So we do have 69.68% remaining of our expenditures, which is a great position to be in. A large portion of that is depreciation, which we add on at the end of the year, but still sitting in a good position for expenses as well.
I move we accept the 2024 stormwater financials as presented and place them on file.
Second.
Motions are approved by Mayor Smith, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. That concludes the stormwater portion. Now we're moving on to item 13, which is the City of Onalaska Sanitary Sewer, which will be discussed in 4 different parts, starting with A, 2025 sanitary sewer budget. And again, back to Kevin.
Yep, thank you. So included included in the packet tonight was the proposed 2025 sanitary sewer budget. The budget does have a few increases. One of the larger ones would be for an anticipated, which we got over the weekend, La Crosse wholesale charges, right? For what the city of La Crosse will charge to treat the sanitary sewer. Some other additional items that were in that budget were IT consulting and some security issues and just some standard costs. Chemical fuel costs have gone up, right? We have to pay for things. So nothing outstandingly huge, just sort of normal business and CPI kind of things is how the budget was forecasted. But probably the biggest increase in the budget was easily the treatment charges, anticipated charges from the city of La Crosse.
Yeah. Mayor.
I had a question. Did you and Jared feel that the anticipated charges from the city of La Crosse were in the scope of what we expected?
Yep. Sabrina and I actually went over that today. Just when we saw that to make sure they were in there. So it does appear that Sabrina and Jared did already have that sort of figured in there already, but I did double check to make sure after seeing that email.
Yeah.
From you, Mayor. So I guess right now staff would entertain would request that the budget be approved as stated in the packet.
I move we approve the 2025 sanitary sewer budget as presented.
Second. So a motion made by Mayor Smith, seconded by myself. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 13B, changes to the treatment rate for 2025.
I'll take that one. So next in your packets on page 68 is our sewer rates, the treatment rate, as well as the transmission rate and the flat rate. We are not asking to increase the current charge for the treatment rate. I will say I forgot to include the estimate. Currently, we're being charged 3,645 per million gallons. The estimate for 2025 is the 3,718 per million gallons. The current charge, Jared and I both feel is adequate to cover those costs. So we are asking that you approve the 3.33.
I'll move to approve to retain the current charge of $3.33 as presented in our packet.
Second.
Motion by myself, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any discussion?
The only thing that I would like to add is we didn't increase the rate last year and we're not this year, but likely we will see an increase in 2026.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And we're on to item C, the changes to the transmission rate, which looks like it's on the same page.
Yes, thank you. Also on page 68 is the transmission rate. We are not recommending any change for the flat rate or the treatment rate, but based again on inflation and just costs, Jared and I discussed this and we are recommending an increase of 7% on the transmission rate.
I move we adjust the charges to the transmission rate with the increase of 7% to $2.87 for 2025.
I'll second. A motion made by Mayor Smith, seconded by myself. Any discussion? Mayor?
No,
Oh,
I'm just
sorry. All right.
sorry. I'll keep my eyes down. Don't make eye contact.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
You just didn't think I could pass on not saying anything for
Well, I
one
saw your
item
hand
on the
wave, and I didn't
agenda.
know. So, all right, item 13D, 2024 sanitary sewer financials. Go ahead. Sorry,
All right.
Sabrina.
Thank you. Next in your packet, starting on page 69, is the sewer utility balance sheet, following to page 71 being the sewer, finishing off the sewer utility balance sheet. Then behind that, starting on page 72, is the budget report. As you can see, year to date, we do have 44.58% remaining to hit our total budgeted revenues. Again, only 2 quarters in, we do have 2 quarters left to bill. We'll be billing, the October billing will be going through here in September. I do feel confident that will meet our budgeted revenues, and Jared felt that way as well when we chatted before he left. Also in your packets, if you continue on and take a look at page 74, this will give you kind of a picture of our total expenditures. We do have 55.48% remaining. We have had some additional costs this year in the sewer utility, which Kevin could talk more about. So I do anticipate our expenses may be over slightly, but I think revenues will be more than what I budgeted as well. So I think we'll come out fairly close to even in the sewer utility. But it'll kind of just be dependent on how the revenues look for the last 2 quarters.
I'll move to approve the 2024 sanitary sewer financials.
Second.
Motion by myself, seconded by Mayor Smith. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 14, City of Onalaska Water will be covered in 3 parts. So beginning with 14A, the 2025 water budget. Again, back to Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. So included in the packet tonight is the 2025 proposed water utility budget. This is this year just sort of general upkeep, items of interest that were added this year, IT and software security items. We do need a little bit more GIS consulting up there for that utility, some engineering design costs, and once again, just sort of nature of the beast in these times, additional costs for chemicals, fuels, power, meters. So nothing really outstanding, no additional requests for staff, just sort of general upkeep and maintenance of the utility. So I'd take any questions anybody would have.
I'll go ahead for just so we can get on the table. I'll move that we approve the 2025 water budget as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Mayor Smith, seconded by Sabrina Steer.
And then under discussion,
Any
Kevin,
discussion?
what were you going to continue to say?
Was that, Mayor?
Oh, did you have something else you were going
Nope.
to add?
Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 14B, submission of water simplified rate and case adjustment to Wisconsin Public Service Commission. Is that going to be you again, Kevin, or is that going to be Sabrina?
I can take that one. So last year, Jared and I brought this forward, first for discussion, to see if it's the will of the committee that we would go out and look to see if we do qualify for a water simplified rate case adjustment. Prior to my time here at the city of Onalaska, we did have to do a full rate case study, and it was a rather large increase over, I think, 3 periods. So it is my recommendation that whenever we can, we would evaluate, and the PSC tells us, based on our financial information, whether they believe we should increase our rates or not. It's kind of, I think it helps the citizen by seeing those smaller increases over year, instead of like a large increase. So it would be my recommendation that we would go to the PSC's website, see if we do qualify, and then we would bring that forward back to the committee.
Is there a cost to this?
No, there's no cost. It's actually rather simple. Like when they say simplified rate case, it is rather simple. They take a look at our PSC reporting, which we have to do every year. And they take a look at our 2023 financials, and they give us an estimate or tell us how much we should increase our water rate.
It sounds like a no-brainer. I mean, anytime you can smooth the increases to the end consumer, that's gonna be better than sharp increases, which will inevitably make them angry. But
You like to make-
And I would say that it was Jared's recommendation that we would do this as well. We both had discussions on that. And I'm sure Kevin can weigh in too. But I just didn't want to go forward with it without talking to the committee.
Do you need a motion on this or just need guidance?
Just guidance.
Okay, never mind about a motion. Cool. All right, I think we're good. All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
So would that affect the budget though? Because if you did the simple, or it would be for 2025.
It would be for
2026.
2025. I always budget pretty conservatively on the revenues. So if the rate case would get approved, likely our revenues would be slightly higher.
But
So we wouldn't adjust any expenses.
Okay, thank you.
It would just be that my conservative budget would be even more conservative because we'd be able to increase our rates.
We're all in agreement that what guidance is yes.
Yes.
All right.
All right, thank
All
you.
right. Moving on to item 14C, the 2024 water financials. Sabrina.
All right, lastly, in your packets is the water utility balance sheet, starting on page 96. That continues on to page 98, showing the water utility assets and then the liabilities that are sitting out there. We have a lot of assets in our water utility. Our water utility reserves are made up mainly of our assets because we have a lot of assets within our water utility. Then on page 99 is the budget report for the water utility. Again, still with the 2 quarters remaining, we're sitting at fiscal activity of $1,467,792, 52.62% remaining. I think we will meet that budgeted revenue by the end of the year. Then on page 101 is our total expenses. Year to date, we do have 61.63% remaining of our $3,401,115 of our budget. Again, just a reminder, 830,000 of that, or around 800,000, will be related to depreciation. So you see that 3.4 and we've spent 1.3. Since this is an enterprise fund, we have to depreciate the assets that we have on our balance sheet. So you see a large difference there, but a large piece of it is for depreciation.
So does that mean you are, because I see that 52.62% remaining for revenues. 61.63% remaining for expenses, but because of depreciation, you're not concerned about that, or?
I'm not, at this time, I'm not concerned.
All right, I'll move to approve the 2024 water financials.
I'll second.
Motion by myself, seconded by Dan. And yes, Dan.
So Sabrina, you had brought up the amount of assets in this utility and all the other utilities. I noticed that the interest income has been pretty favorable, and like in this one, it's 218% of goal. With rates expected to start dropping, I mean, we left ourselves a pretty good margin. Will we have to adjust that in the future, or is this kind of a low point? For example, in the water utility, we're budgeting for 20,000 and we're already at 43. So we've got plenty of room for it to go down, but I know that we don't want to get caught where we're dependent on interest income in the budget, and then that floor falls out underneath us. So do you have any thoughts on how static this point is, or how often that gets reviewed and changed?
Good question. So when it comes to interest income, I do budget pretty conservatively on that. I think 20,000, even in the earlier part of me starting here at the city. So in 2021, when rates were super low and we were getting next to nothing on our savings accounts, we were able to meet that 20,000. So that's kind of why I've kept it there, because if rates were to tank and we were not to receive as much in interest income, I feel comfortable at that number. I definitely could increase it in the budget that we already passed, but that's kind of why I keep it at that range.
It's better to be pleasantly surprised than, caught with your pants down, so.
Right.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to the final item, number 15, adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion to adjourn by Alder Stevens, seconded by Sabrina Steger. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. I have the time as 5:03.